Welcome to the Sober Nation FM podcast, where we're putting recovery on the map. I'm your host, Jonathan Sylvester. This show is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Do you want to take your recovery to the next level? Do you want more support, community, and fellowship? Sobriety Engine is an incredible community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. You can get a ton of great tips, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in recovery and in life. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. Sober Nation FM is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle, all while supporting your sobriety, then you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Nation, let's hop right into today's episode. Today, I'll be speaking with former NFL quarterback Quincy Carter. Thanks for coming on the show, Quincy.
Thank you, buddy, man. Thanks for having me, too.
Yeah, really glad to have you here, man. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and I'd really like to hop right in here and ask a little bit about what was going on before you got sober. So what did life look like? Can you tell me where your addiction started or where you think it started?
Yeah, you know something, Jonathan, man, one of the beautiful things about recovery is getting through the hard parts and the difficult parts that you really got, to go back and look at and do some work around it. But man, I really can pinpoint me smoking weed in that parking lot when I was 16 years old. Me and my buddies was having a drink-a-thon. I tend to call it now by, talking about it. And we were down in some 40s. We had some weed. First of all, I drunk a whole 40. We just shotgun it or whatever you want to call it. And I drunk one, and then I started on my second one. And I ended up throwing up, but we had the weed with us too, so we smoked the weed afterwards, and I can never forget that feeling. And man, as time went along, I left the house right after high school and headed to play pro baseball, and I never forget that time where I got really depressed and was just away from home for the first time ever, man. And that's when I started coping with weed, with just kind of letting the time pass by. And then also, because I was ready to get back home, I started off hot in the minor leagues. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, man, I just being homesick hit me. And I used marijuana to cope with that. So it really, really started there. I tinkered with it here and there in high school, but it was never, an everyday thing. But, that one experience reminded me of what I could go back to. And then, while I was playing baseball, man, for the first time at 18 years old, man, that's when things really started to pick up for me.
Okay. Yeah, man. Yeah. Because you have a really incredible career and I'm just going to say like a lifetime as an athlete, which is really awesome. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But, I was the biggest pothead. So I feel you on the weed. And I think for me, I drank here and there, but it was really, for me, like I always say, high school was weed school. It was all about weed, like where to get the best weed, how to grow weed, all that stuff. So, I know like for me and a lot of guests I've had on the show, when they talk about that first moment that they can really recall or remember, that like kind of jumping off point, I know that I just felt like, man, this is a good fit. Like hitting this right here is a good fit. I can be myself. Did you feel any of that? Like that first time, did you feel like, okay, like, yeah, this will probably work for me or anything like that?
I did. And looking back, hindsight, it was that drunk feeling I had. And then when I hit the marijuana, everything just evened out and kind of, smoothed off everything, man. And I never forget that feeling right there. And that high. And I guess, like they say, a lot of people say this, and when you really think about it, it's true. It's almost like you're chasing that same high, every time else you get high. So that was that moment for me, man. And that was that feeling for me that I felt that eventually I kept chasing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I get that. Now, so walk me through this because you get drafted by the Cubs, right?
Yep.
And so you go off to play ball, and yeah, I appreciate that insight. You know, you said that you go off, you're a little bit homesick, and this is when you start using weed to kind of cope. So what was going on there? I mean, it sounds like this was kind of like the next steps that accelerated things a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a mama's boy, and I'm not scared to admit that. And I'm an only child too at the same time. So
Yep,
being away
right
from my
here,
mom,
right here.
man, oh wow, welcome to the club too. But being away from my mom, man, was it was devastating for me, man. And so I really missed her. I missed home. You know, I had a great time in high school, man. We ended up winning the state championship, so we had some great times. And just all of a sudden, I'm away from my friends. So I really missed that, man. And so marijuana became my coping mechanism to get through some tough times that I was going through mentally. And I ended up quitting baseball after a couple years and going back to the University of Georgia. I originally signed with Georgia Tech, but they had a quarterback there who was entrenched there as the starter for a couple years and doing a great job as far as being the starter. So I ended up going to the University of Georgia. And honestly, man, my freshman year, I can only recount about 2 or 3 times that I actually smoked weed. And that's simply because everything was new to me. I was happy, I was excited, and it was no need for me to, add weed into the repertoire or whatever or my routine. So I didn't really smoke much my freshman year. Now I did drink a little bit, with some buddies.
Sure.
Drinking was, in the picture. But it wasn't one of those things where, I was going back to the bottle, I was smoking on an everyday basis. And then I really, really looking back at it, man, my sophomore year, when things kind of started to pick up for me a little bit, was really after we lost a game early in the season of Tennessee. No, I'm sorry. After we lost to South Carolina, actually, which was the second game of the year. Tennessee was my first time I smoked my freshman year. But anyway, and we lost that game, and I pretty much smoked the rest of the season. It was the pressure, of actually, playing, trying to live up to Heisman expectations from the school and everything. And so, and I really started to feel that a little bit. And that's when I think, for the first time, I can really feel my anxiety picking up a little bit and me using those coping mechanisms to deal with what I was going through. So things kind of progressed there my sophomore year, my junior year. I kind of had a pretty good off season where I wasn't smoking as much. But as soon as we lost the game, and actually it was South Carolina my junior year. It wasn't
Okay.
South Carolina my sophomore year. It was South
Yeah.
Carolina junior year, and that's when smoking really picked up for me again. So really, man, it was after key losses, me feeling anxiety, and things just really just you know kind of picked up for me as far as me trying to deal with everything I was dealing with in my life. So that's kind of how college went back and forth,
Sure.
on and off, and of course, I had drinking in there a little bit too.
Okay, got it. Yeah. No, man, and you have a pretty legendary career. I know that I was reading, I didn't know this, but I remember from the song, even though it's like a throwback now, Gucci Man and Trap House he even calls you
Well,
out, which is kind of cool. So a pretty amazing career. And then at some point you get drafted, right? You get drafted by the Cowboys, right? Okay. And so, man, I think that I read like you got a pretty fat signing bonus, right? I mean, I think they were paying you pretty well. I'm just curious, like, was that another moment where like everything was kind of cool and you weren't really smoking anymore, or what was going on with the drug use and the drinking around the time that you got drafted?
well, I'm gonna tell you this. Here's another time, Jonathan. After the season, my junior year, I decided to enter the NFL draft. And I knew I had a lot to prove. I only played 6 games that year,
Oh,
as a matter
wow.
of fact, my junior year,
Yeah.
because I broke my thumb.
Mm.
Um, and so, that was another time where I just, for 3 months, man, I said I wasn't going to be smoking or anything. And I stayed focused on that. Funny thing, Jonathan, uh, I want to say about a week before the NFL Combine
Yeah.
is when I ended up, I ended up smoking a little weed just to kind
Wow.
of take the edge off.
Yeah.
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 And here I am, 7, 8 days. I had this um, uh,
Yeah.
detoxification.
Detox.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, and I took it for 7 days, and you drink a gallon and a half water with it and everything. And I was literally doing that
Hmm.
right before the NFL Combine,
Yeah.
which is the craziest thing. So that's what I'm telling you, man. It's a beautiful thing to really look back on where you started making your mistakes and kind of, I had addict, ideas and motives and actions long, long time ago. I just could never see really the signs. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, man, I ended up smoking. And it was only like one day, Jonathan, but I knew I had to clean up, but after the draft, I get drafted or whatever. And then that's kind of when things, started to pick back up for me, doing a little partying, happy about being drafted and everything, which, that's understandable. But I didn't realize at the time I had a bigger problem than I thought I had.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did that about, pretty much leading up until the season, to be honest with you, and end up getting hurt my second game of the year. I tore my hamstring. I had to have surgery on my birthday. How about that?
Wow.
Listen, man. I've had some memorable birthdays that is just legendary. I've been arrested twice on my
Oh,
birthday.
man.
I've had surgery on my birthday. Listen, this year on my birthday, Jonathan, I literally was on a Zoom conference call with child support, paying off some child
Oh,
support.
man. Oh, man. We might need to skip the birthday this year.
I know, right? This just passed. This was October 13th.
Yeah.
So, but I ended up having surgery. Came back the last 6 games of my rookie year, man, and we ended up finishing, I think, 3-3. Had a decent year, but smoking and
Mm.
drinking was still, not a big major part, but it still played a part into my rookie year, though.
Okay. Yeah. I've got to ask, man, because I'm no professional athlete. Like, how do you balance that with getting high? I mean, how does that work? I know now, like, there's a lot of guys coming out that are in the NFL that smoke weed all the time. It's almost
Yeah.
like, everyone just knows it's kind of what people are doing, especially in the States, where it's legal. But like, how do you balance that? Like, in my mind, it's just the last thing I wanted to go do was run or work out or any of that when I was smoking weed. So how do you balance that?
Listen, Jonathan, when I hear people say in the rooms, and when they say, literally, if you want to go do some research, go back out there and get your butt kicked.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you this, when I think about this, I was literally doing research to see how much I can smoke, and watch film and retain
Oh,
information,
wow. Yeah.
how much I can smoke, Jonathan, and literally go to my workouts and run and see if how winded I was. Uh, so these are the crazy things that I was doing,
Wow.
to try to say, oh, okay, we can try to accept the fact that I can do this and still play football. So when you think about some of those things, man, it's some of the craziest things. But Jonathan, in hindsight, man, to be honest with you, I could literally watch a film and see the weeks that I wasn't smoking and then I was smoking, and I was
Mm.
two different players, my reactions and everything else. So those are the crazy kind of balancing acts I thought I was, trying to do and get away with and try
Yeah.
to improve my game. As
Mm-hmm.
crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, but I think it makes sense, right? Because whether you're in the NFL or not, I think you pointed out a couple things that I know I did, and I'm sure our listeners and the people watching can can relate to, and that's that uh, self-sabotage,
Yep.
right? Like the kind of like the days leading up to the draft where, it's your life is on the line, your future's on the line. And we get this bright idea that like, hey, I'm going to go, and then the kind of like testing the waters a little bit
Yeah.
to see like what we can get away with. And I'm sure, I mean, if it were me and I'm getting ready to go out on the field, I'm probably thinking that, well, if I smoke a little weed, it like loosens me up a little bit. Like I'll probably be able to move around a little bit more, like, who knows? I mean, we tell ourselves these crazy things though,
They're
right?
crazy things, man. Yeah, it's sad.
So I do need to ask, man. Like, I've heard a lot of rumors about Dallas Cowboys over the years. Does this just stick with weed, or do we ever move on to any other drugs over the years?
Well, yeah, man. It was weed and alcohol for me at first. And I started tinkering around with X pills around '03, '04 in the off season. Um, yeah, I never did them during the season or whatever. But the year I got cut in '04, I failed my drug test for marijuana. I kind of got the stigma of the cocaine thing from all the years past. But in '05 I didn't sign either with a team. In '06, man, that's when my pill addiction with X pills really just took off.
Hmm.
And then I found out I could really drink heavily, like a fish. And man, that's when my drinking took off to another level. And we almost was kind of starting to take a little back door, and we was just really just a kind of calm everything down, to be
Sure.
honest
Yeah.
with you. Yeah. So I went on like that for years, Jonathan. And then in 2015, I went to rehab up in Michigan, this concussion protocol rehab through the NFL. I ended up staying and trying to go live with my dad in Chicago. And we didn't hit it off too well. I didn't grow up with him, but I wanted some kind of geographical change to say I can do this somewhere else or something like that. And we ended up getting into it because I wanted to borrow some money from him. And he just knew I was getting the itch to get back out there. So he didn't do that. So we got into an argument. I forced my way over one of my cousin's house, and I just ran into cocaine heaven. And never forget the first day I was at her house, because she let me live with her for a few months. And we started doing cocaine together, man. And it just hit like this, man. And it took a while for me to even, man, it might have been 3-4 years, Jonathan, before I even picked up X pill again. So yeah, I graduated. I ended up, graduating to cocaine and doing that. But during my playing times, it was, smoking and drinking. And like I said, around that '03, '04 period, I started tinkering around with X pills, but it wasn't heavy until after I got cut. And then I just took off.
Okay, got it. And so what's going on with the football during all this? Because I know at one point, like you play some arena ball, you go up and you
Yeah,
play in Canada. So you're still just like, I mean, what? Obviously, the drugs are getting in the way of all this.
yeah.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, man. Honestly, Jonathan, '07, I went down to play in Shreveport.
yeah,
I got kind of promised a few things, but Jonathan, I was so miserable.
mm,
Looking back on my life, seeing where I was just 2 years ago, and I couldn't allow myself to even give myself a chance, to really get back in the NFL. And I really got caught up in the lifestyle of playing in the arena league. You don't practice till about 4 or 5 o'clock. It's like perfect for an addict like
mm,
myself. You're out all night, you sleep all day. And I fell into that routine, Jonathan. Ended up getting suspended for 4 games. I literally went and partied one night, was supposed to be at practice, told coach that I was sick. They come knocking on the door, and I don't even answer the door. End up getting suspended 4 games. Tried to justify it, actually, if you can believe that. So, but arena ball just became a big party to me.
okay,
Actually, I signed up in Kansas City Brigade in '08 and had actually an opportunity to go play for the Dolphins, but I couldn't stop using. Bill Parcells actually came and gave me a workout, but I couldn't stop using, man. And so when I went to go do the physical part of my workout, I literally put hot water in the cup because I couldn't piss in a cup, but I had a great workout. Bill Parcells told me to go back to the hotel. We're going to sign you. But then when they started checking their records and everything and checking back at the drug test, he said, I can't even test the test. So I know he's been doing something. Wow. Then in 2009, there was another big party out in Abilene. And I ended up fracturing my back, my L3 in my back. And I had to make a decision after resting for about 4 or 5 weeks, whether or not to play a playoff game. And so, man, I decided not to play. And that's, kind of where that season ended. And then 7 years later, Jonathan, I'm up in Pennsylvania. I'm getting clean out of rehab. We have our phones with us, which is the worst. And so a guy calls me about playing some football in Corpus Christi. And I swear to God, I forgot about my back because I wasn't doing no work and really working on me. Yeah. I was just there to go rest up for a little while, and take a little break from life and get right back out of there. Mm-hmm. And I had the great idea after 7 years to go play some arena football. Ended up getting down there. We only played about 3 games. I was staying at a hotel with this owner who had all this money. So I'm staying at a hotel for months and not even having a sense of mind to think that I'm not even actually playing a football season. I'm running around town partying. It was the craziest thing ever, man. But
wow. Well, so so you said in 2015, you go to treatment, not ready, get introduced to cocaine. So moving forward a few years here, I mean, what is the real turning point for you? Like, when do you become more ready, more willing to do something about all this?
Yeah, 2017, man, I thought was a great attempt for me to get sober. And I put together about 10 months exactly.
Okay.
Jonathan, I ran into some money because I borrowed it. I borrowed some money, and I ran into some money. And Jonathan, it took me about a week to move back down to South Texas, where I was living at previously, from that arena ball, team or whatever, and moved back down there, Jonathan. And my addiction, man, just took off on me again. It took me about a week to leave LA because I was in Malibu doing some sober living out there. And it took me about a week, man, and I was off back to the races. And we're talking, Jonathan, literally, 2008, November 2018, November 2017 that was, through 18. And in July of last year, 2019, Jonathan, man, me and my ex-girlfriend went to a party. It was the Pacquiao and Thurman fight. And we went there, and at 4:00 in the morning, Jonathan, we went to the party together. At 4:00 in the morning, I was calling her to pick me up. I have no recollect of when she left the party. I've got the stories or whatever. And I woke up that morning, man, and we got into a little argument or whatever. And I was getting ready to go back on the same cycle, man, that day, trying to get myself, a little bit leveled off with drinking and coke and weed a little bit. And man, with us arguing and everything, man, I just bust out into tears, man. And I was just praying out to God and said, I can't do this no more, man. And I gave Hollywood Henderson a call and let him know that, man, you gotta come get me, man, before I end up killing myself, man. And so, Hollywood made a phone call to Marsha Stone over at BRC. And within 5 hours, man, they were down there to pick me up. And man, to be honest with you, that day really turned things around for me. But the work, Jonathan, man, that I'm doing on a constant basis to keep my spirit right and my recovery has not been easy or, a cruise at all. But one constant thing, man, is I've made a decision, to surrender to this program and to surrender to God and let God do the things that I can't do for myself. So I think that's been really key. You know, I got some men around me like Hollywood and Anthony, so they hear this right now with me even trying to give myself a little bit of credit. They'll tell me I'm full of you know what right now. So, but they keep me in check, man. But those are, you know, those are the things, man. I've been able to really, you know, hone in on and look at my life, man. With you know, with some other things that I'm doing too that's helping. That's really didn't help me out these last 16 months.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so, you know, one thing I did want to ask, because you did say that you got into some other drugs, but you know, it sounds like, again, we're similar in the sense that weed was kind of always present. And I've
Hmm.
definitely heard a lot of people, you know, in recovery, even from, you know, when I went to treatment, people in recovery saying like it's just weed, you know,
Hmm.
like not really a big deal. I'm just curious, like knowing your own story and maybe seeing some other people's stories too. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, I think any mind altering drug is dangerous. You
Mm.
know, I don't like to put everybody in the addict category, you
Sure.
know, because
Yeah.
everybody, you know, they've got their own experiences. But anything that's going to change your mind and put you in another state, you know, you got to be careful of because, you know, you may, you know, become that addict that I eventually became. I'm not all that. I don't get all that scientific with it as far as, you know, saying it's a gene that you have in you
Right.
or
Right.
it's something that's built up over time. But
Sure.
I mean, you can literally look at my story and see where I was smoking and it was, you know, casual fun. But then eventually I used that casual fun of smoking for coping mechanisms as my life went along.
Hmm.
And then when the weed wasn't good enough, then it was pills. When the pills weren't good enough, then it was cocaine. And now we just got a whole cluster, you know what, and a whole mess. And then everything just goes snowballing downhill. So, you know, those are the chances you take. You know, when you know, put a mind altering chemical in your body like marijuana, and marijuana can be very tricky. And then you know, the other thing now, you know, Jonathan, man, what we're facing right now, this is not even regular weed they're growing.
Oh
They're
man,
literally, yeah,
it's
they're
crazy.
literally, they're in the weed business of making money. So they're
Yeah.
gonna make the most addictive,
Yeah.
chemical-based marijuana you've ever even tasted. It. We don't even get the same munchies, you know, off this marijuana that we did when I was
Mm.
growing up. So,
Yeah.
so it's a different ball game out there now.
Oh man, I know. Like I saw like a video of like what they do now. Like, and I mean it's crazy, man. It's like a science experiment. I was like,
Yeah,
this doesn't even look like weed. I
yeah,
mean, what? Yeah,
exactly.
this is pretty different. But yeah, I mean, I was just curious about, and I'm with you. I think, you know, I'm in the camp that it's no matter what, it's a mind altering substance, and I think that also, you know, like I was definitely one of those people that said like it's not a gateway drug. Like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But when I look back at my own story, it was like, man, step one, weed. Step two, cocaine. You know, it was the gateway to everything else. So
Yes.
so and not like it will be for everyone, like you're saying, but I think we have a shared experience in that, it sounds like.
Yeah, but
Um yeah. So, you know, the way that we got connected was that I actually saw that you were at another inpatient facility doing some speaking. Why do you feel like doing things like that is important? Like, why do you do things like that?
man, because when you've been through what I've been through, and you're able to feel and get connected with God like you never have before, and you can overcome the things that I've been able to overcome. And if I could, you know, just give some message or some hope to somebody who's feeling that desperation that I've been feeling for years, man, and to get some kind of solution to get to the problem, man, like I feel obligated to do it, to be honest with you,
Mm.
because this was years and years of just pain and misery and guilt and shame. And man, if I can do anything to help somebody get up out those feelings that I was feeling, man, I feel obligated to God to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense. I do want to ask, so you got sober in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, what do you feel like maybe one of the biggest things that you struggled with, like as you got going? Like, what do you think one of the biggest struggles was?
Step one, like literally, no, seriously, like
Yeah.
literally, I was not seeing how bad life was for me. And
Mm,
as crazy as that sounds,
yeah.
because I was able to have the opportunity of, okay, getting on the arena football team.
Hmm.
That made me feel good for a little bit, even though
Hmm.
I was smoking weed and drinking and peeling up and all the way through it. Coaching, getting a job, that was instant gratification. Going out and working out kids. So I was literally doing things that were rewarding to my soul for just a little minute, and then being able to try to feel good about what I was doing, and so yeah, man, that went on, for years, man. And the other thing, Jonathan, I really never, surrendered to this program. I heard what people were saying, you know what I mean? But I wasn't willing to take those steps and to surrender to the program, and surrender to God and let Him take this thing out of my hands. And I wasn't willing to make those steps. And then the other thing, probably, I think was probably the most thing that I wasn't doing, is I wasn't willing to really look at my life and to really see and point that finger at myself that I was, the root of all my problems, as the book says. So being unwilling to do all of those things, man, just kept me out in those streets longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know, and for the people that are in 12-step programs that are listening, so, in the first step, we're talking about powerlessness and unmanageability.
Yeah. Sorry about
And
that.
I was in a meeting the other day, and always saying, actually, I haven't heard this topic many times, so I think it's an important point, and definitely just what you were touching on. Like, one of the most important things that I've learned is that when it comes to the unmanageability, I think, especially for someone like you, that like gets like, maybe has some money in their pocket, gets like, the steel playing arena football, doing workouts with Bill Parcells, possibilities. It's like, man, when I have money in the bank and I have a job, like, how can you tell me that things are unmanageable?
Exactly.
And that was me for a little while. And I couldn't see that I was worse off than anyone. And really, at the end of the day, I think that in my mind, what the unmanageability is all about, it's like, how do I feel about this guy that I see in the mirror?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I thinking about this guy that I'm seeing in the mirror every morning? And yeah, I think that's a great point. I really appreciate you pointing that out, and just mentioning the struggle with the first step, because I think all of us have that struggle, for a period of time, for sure.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask, and I'm curious about this, and not that you can mention necessarily any names or anything like that. But have you come across any other guys from the NFL, maybe veterans or maybe even guys that are still playing, that have gotten sober?
I have. I was actually up at that concussion rehab protocol I was telling you about
Right.
in,
Okay.
yeah, in Michigan. And to be honest with you, Jonathan, you would be surprised how many guys, have been struggling for years. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you, one of the biggest things Hollywood Henderson had me do is he called it coming out of the closet, and because he called me a closet addict, and really, telling my testimony and telling my story. And I've had a lot of friends of mine from from various leagues or whatever, get in contact with me and want to see, some of the things that I did to really, start getting my life back on the right track. So yeah, the numbers are staggering, man, and you'll be surprised how many guys are struggling with this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know that, you mentioned your injuries, and that's just unfortunately comes with the territory. And of course,
Yeah.
there's so many guys that get hooked on pain pills, and back in the day, it was
Mhm.
just like you would go into the locker room, the trainer would give you something, or you'd get injected with something, and you just go right back out on the field. So this
Exactly.
is we're talking about, I mean, I believe it, because we're really talking about generations of players, you know, in all kinds of leagues that have been, you know, that have kind of gone through that. And if they're like I am and kind of susceptible to this addiction stuff, then yeah, I can see how that would be a struggle.
Mhm.
Now, the year you got sober, you also started a quarterback school for, I believe, mainly young men, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I started a few years back, but this is really the first time that I'm really entrenched, living it. I've done a lot of traveling here over the past year. I put on quarterback camps in Florida and Georgia, Texas here. I got some scheduled ones in Colorado and things of that nature. But then I also do individual training too. And then I have group settings, you know, in various places. What I'm getting ready to actually put together is about 6 camps for next year,
Oh,
and
cool.
put together a miniature little combine before our skills and 7-on-7 things that we're going to be doing. I have an announcement on that here at the first of the year. So man, I'm really entrenched in the communities everywhere. I work out kids from about 7 all the way through college. I don't like them too young where they're not conceptualizing what I'm trying to teach. And I'm actually just, taking someone's money. I'm not into that for that business. I want to see them be able to conceptualize it and then apply it. Uh, but I've got some advanced 7 and 8 years old kids that can do it. But man, I'm having fun with it. Like I said, I'm doing a little traveling with it too. And man, just really, really just trying to pour into these kids' lives, not only on the field but off the field also.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, and I know that with the coaching I do, I can see a little relationship there between that and recovery. Do you
Hmm.
see any of that with these QB camps that you run and this coaching that you do?
Yeah, you do, but it's not a very favorable subject, of course. But
Yeah.
I do bring it up. I don't, try to accuse anybody of doing things, but at the same time, I, remind them of the things I've been through. Some of them ask questions when they get too intuitive. I kind of can pick up on maybe if there may be a problem there, somebody's tinkering around with something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm pretty open with all my athletes, man. I really think, man, my coaches were, the same way with me. They were an open book, and I feel comfortable in sharing my life with them. And any way I can help them, man, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I would think that would be helpful because, again, if you can help one of these kids kind of
Mm-hmm.
avoid that road that you took, if anything, they're like, if you're just laying out to them, like, hey, we're not even talking about getting hooked on drugs. We're talking about you having a chance to go play pro ball. Do you want to
Exactly.
screw that up? And that one conversation, switches up their thinking a little bit. I mean, that's a
Uh-huh.
pretty amazing thing right there. So, I can definitely see the relation in that. So I want to ask, you talked about, the importance of you kind of sharing your story or your testimony, as you put it. Can you give us an idea of what your recovery actually looks like today?
Yes, man. Every day, every morning, I get up. Now, some mornings I can't go through my whole full routine, but I read the third step prayer every morning, the 7 step prayer in the morning, 417 in acceptance, and step 11 too, the St. Francis prayer. And so I do that. I've got a spiritual, little kind of godly, little daily. It's almost like the Just for Today NA, and I
Okay, like
do
a
read the Just
meditation
for
book.
yeah, exactly. But my mom sends them to me, and I'm drawing a blank on the exact name. But my mom sends them to me, so I would go through those readings every morning, and then I either listen to Eric Thomas or I either listen to this pastor John Wesley out of DC right now. So I either go through those, meet with my sponsor once a week. If we can't meet that week, we'll meet the next week. I've got 3 great men in my life. I would say recovery wise, Hollywood Henderson, my buddy Anthony, and then my sponsor Skip. So they hold me accountable for everything. If there's anything I'm having, questions about, I'm constantly calling them. And man, after I get up and have my mornings, man, I just go about my day and just let God take care of it, man. So, I've struggled with Zoom meetings for a little while. So I was able to get back into the groove of going back out to meetings. So I'm going about 3 or 4 meetings a week now, because I struggle with Zoom. It got so bad where I was literally turning off the camera and watching TV and trying to listen to a meeting. That's no, seriously. So I got checked real hard about it. But Jonathan, I think another thing I didn't point out earlier, the honesty piece is really helping me out. I'm not hiding anything because I know those are the pitfalls. I never forget. When I really, really started honing in and listening, the little pieces of honesty, they just add up to the big things. And here comes the fall. So, if it's a female I ain't supposed to be messing with, or if it's me oversleeping, early in my recovery, trying to go to a meeting, I'm being honest about those things and not hiding things so I can hear the messages that I need to be hearing to get back on track, man. So I'm just staying focused. Every day hadn't been great. I still got the baby mama drama. I'm still dealing with my moms and everything. But man, I'm allowing my spirit to get fed and just letting God take over. So I'm able to, deal with those issues a little bit better though.
Yeah, man, that's all great stuff. And Eric Thomas, awesome speaker.
Yeah, but
Super motivational. I've listened to a lot of his stuff. He's a great speaker, but I'm with you. I think what you just pointed out, that's all great stuff. But I think one of the biggest things for me, and I always try to share this because it's impacted my life so much, is really having like that strong start to the day. Because I always think about, like in a Groundhog Day scenario where I have 2 of the exact same day, the day where I really prepare myself in the morning, I'm likely to, react to things a whole lot better and probably have a whole lot more successful day in my mind. So
exactly.
yeah, so I'm with you on that 100%. I think you just gave some pretty good words of wisdom there. But before we wrap up, I'm curious if there's maybe one piece of advice that you'd like to share with the Sober Nation in terms of maybe someone that's new or out there struggling.
Yeah, I think that if it's one piece that I really want to give, I think you got to have patience with this thing. I got off to a great start in my newfound journey, and then I hit a little roadblock. Where I was getting busy and not getting fed, going to meetings and things like that. I was in and out of town, and just taking things slow and having patience. And you can't get it all back. I ran into a couple months ago, ran into a little argument with my baby moms and my mother for the first time in a long time. But I wasn't doing the little things, to really feed my spirit on a consistent basis, So, be patient with this process, man. It's not going, happen overnight. And something so crazy. Hollywood said this to me this morning. He just say things and just leave it there. He said, I got something for you. I said, what's up? He said, man, it took 50 years to walk in the woods. It takes 50 years to walk back.
I like that. Yeah, that's pretty good.
So that's what he left me with today. That literally happened today, man. So yeah, man. So just be patient with the process.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's really great advice. So you can connect with Quincy by visiting QuincyCarter17.com. Thanks again for coming on the show, Quincy.
Thank you for having me, bud. I really appreciate it.
Be sure to check out the show notes for all the info from today's episode. Sober Nation FM is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Sobriety Engine is a free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. This show is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle while supporting your sobriety, you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And again, whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Nation, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.